Yo, 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 what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, the franchise player. That's right, Double B Bad Blood. And I'm joined here by my boy, once again, the combat sports analyst for the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast, Mr. Adam, according to Woods. Adam, what is up, my man?
What's good? I mean, got the UFC Vegas 19 playing in the background. Just got off with Bloodsport, Josh Barnett's fifth incarnation of Bloodsport. So it's all rowdy all the time. Combat sports happening literally more than you could shake a stick at.
I mean, I wouldn't want to shake a stick at that combat sports at Bloodsport, man. I saw some crazy, wild stuff in Bloodsport 4. So I'm
Yes,
pretty sure
sir.
Bloodsport 5 was off the chain.
Oh, off all the chains, no ropes. So literally, it's not even on any ropes. It's on a different level.
Exactly. Speaking of on a different level, we all know that AEW Dynamite, Kenny Omega issued an open challenge to John Moxley in the form of a exploding ring match.
This is facts.
Now, exploding rings, man, that's some dangerous shit. Like people seriously get hurt with some exploding rings. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about four ring posts, blowing up at any given time. And tonight's guest on the special edition Saturday night of the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast, this guest has done more in the hardcore world of professional wrestling. Talking about frontier martial arts wrestling, we're talking about IWA, we're talking about World Underground Wrestling, and this guy has done it all. And it's really funny because he started back in the day trading wrestling tapes.
And wouldn't you know who won the podium?
Exactly. From trading wrestling tapes to wrestling in Japan for FMW, for Wings, for WWS, IWA. I mean, dude, this guy is legit. He came to work at BCW Worldwide, and this man runs around the ring with a fucking chainsaw, man. Like crazy chainsaw. Like the fans were like, what the hell is going on out here? Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you and bring to the Roundtable Podcast a man known worldwide as Leatherface. Chainsaw Tony Myers. Chainsaw Tony Myers, Leatherface, welcome to the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast.
Yeah, I'm standing here holding my phone. God, I got an awful lot to live up to with an introduction like that.
Well, man, hey, you don't have to worry about living up to it because your record speaks for itself, man. I mean, fuck.
What, passion over common sense? Yeah,
I mean, look who your mentor was. Fuck you, Mr. Pogo, man. Come on.
Yeah. It's kind of strange. Like I first met him in '94, and even back then in Japan, he was like, "I'm going to start up my own independent." And you always kind of hear that from people, especially during that whole time period of like mid '90s, where it seemed like everybody was starting up their own. So. It's not that I brushed it off. I was just like, oh, okay, I'll keep my, and then
keep my number.
6 years later, he launched WWS. He bought out all the rights to all that old Wing stuff and had about, so many of the originals that were on board with him. And, it was the one place that like took me in when there wasn't like steady work with whatever incarnation Onita had or Ryumago or any of those guys. It's the one place I knew that I could, and they were busy enough for me to have like full-time work. Along the way, they picked up like a subsidiary promotion where it was like cat fighting, but they still had some of the guys on the roster, doing what they were doing. And Yappy, which is like no ring on mats and that kind of thing. So it just became this one thing leading to another kind of, and then I was just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, literally.
I mean, man, like I said, you've done it all, man. Like, fuck, you've done it all. Kevin Brandt says hi.
Yeah, you got to tell I gave him a special. That's my handler. His handler.
Yeah, his handler. That's right. So let's talk about you, man. Like, let's talk about the whole progression from fan, tape trader, VHS back in the day. Like a lot of you guys are watching this podcast and the ones that are listening on Spotify, Google Play, Apple, and iHeartRadio.
saying what in
You
the
know,
world is VHS, but
yeah, you guys probably don't know what a VHS is, but
I still have mine. That's the scariest thing is I didn't want to get rid of them. I still have them. They're like still like labeled like a Dewey Decimal System, so I could find everything.
no. So you're talking
And
about Dewey Decimal. People on this podcast don't even know what that is.
uh, well,
Dewey, King
that was
Dewey.
that
No,
King
was
Dewey.
another place to go.
King Dewey.
That was another place to go. You could go to a library, a public library, and like look up whatever pro wrestling you could possibly listen to and that kind of thing. So I mean, it was like every avenue I could take at that time. I was like, even like reading up on amateur wrestling because that had like some involvement with pro wrestling. And I read that. I remember reading in the magazines that Scott Rex Steiner, the WWA World Heavyweight Champion that beat the Great Wojo, that he was an amateur wrestler at Michigan State. I just kept reading up on stuff and just kept poking my head around. I mean, something had to give, something had to break, and eventually I went to independent shows that were so bad that they were literally taking people out of the crowd. It's
Oh my
like,
God.
yeah, I mean, I think people kind of have it skewed as to like places I've been or, accomplishments, this, that, and the other. Like, I have to remember this started when I was, the tapes and all that stuff. It didn't kick into high gears till I started going to the conventions. But back then it was like in the back of Wrestling Eye magazine. And
Hmm.
it was like, toward the later 80s that I started swapping tapes. And then, the newsletters, the dirt sheets or whatever, then you just swap tapes with those people and you start running into all the same people. And half of those tape traders were either managers on the indie scene or Joel Gertner was one. So, you know, uh, you would swap with people tapes and you'd commit their legal name to memory because you were so excited. It was like a kid on Christmas opening up all your stuff. And next thing you know, you're like managed by Daryl Streety, and you're like, wait a minute, I trade tapes with that guy. He
Right?
didn't wrestling. Yeah. Like for AWA stuff, Johnny Mercedes was a guy that, he was like one of the guys that were used for Vern Gagne and all them. And even he swapped tapes. So I was like, wait a minute. So there's really no bridge here. Like, there's no bridge between like fan and just super fan that got into wrestling. So I didn't feel so bad when I made the plunge and started trying to wrestle.
So when you started wrestling, where did well, okay, so let's rewind. Let's go back to the early days. Where did you train? Like where were your original training, trained? Where were you originally trained? That's what I'm trying to say.
The first place I went was like right around my 15th birthday. I went down to um, by then it was Charlie Fulton that was running the Monster Factory, but it was that had been taken over. Larry Sharp had inherited it pretty much from Buddy Rogers
Hmm.
because Buddy Rogers would train a bunch of his guys that he would like always have sticking around him and all the places he went. So I started there, and then I found out about Mike Sharp's wrestling school, and I always knew about ECPW, which was only like 5-10 minutes out of the way, and the Savaldis had local TV, so they were using all those guys. So first time going into the ECPW, I was only 17 years old, but at the time I was also going to Mike Sharp's in Brick Township, New Jersey, and I was going to Larry Sharp's, which was down in Flemington, and I was also like Bill DeMont opened up a racquetball court.
Hmm.
So it was like between all four of them, like Mike Sharps, you would go down there and you pay $8 because if you already trained just for ring time or whatever, they would make you pay $8 and then he would write you out a receipt. And I remember years ago cleaning out my wrestling bag and coming up across like an old crumpled up receipt that Mike Sharp had neatly handwritten out. So yeah, it was between all four of them, and then Circle City Wrestling was running around that time. I was only 17 years old, but I had just gotten a car, so I go all the way out to Indianapolis to even try to do those independents. And I was like Mike Samples, Burt Prentice had taken it over by then. So I mean, like it was anywhere that you could go, and hey, I got my stuff with me, because walking into that wrestling school at first, being 5'3" and 95 pounds, you're told by everybody you're too small. Maybe we could use you as a referee. Maybe we could do this with you, that with you. But, it's just trying to find a way in. Back then, it was just so much more difficult, even with the wrestling schools I was going to.
Well, back then it was difficult to get into the business because it was actually a business. Guys weren't. Nowadays a kid can call highspots.com and buy a ring, and have two vets come down and do a seminar for them, and then that guy who did the seminar is now the trainer. He's the head trainer of the school that's in his backyard, and he's got like three people that went to the seminar with him. They're now lead instructors, and they've all have like 25 days in the business, and that's the way it is nowadays. When I came up, it was the same way. Like, we literally had to go and learn how to wrestle and learn how to be a professional inside the ring and outside the ring before any promoter or any booker would even look at you.
Yeah. And then another thing that I had like loaded up was Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler were coming in pretty frequently for Dennis Carluzzo. So I was like the world's biggest Eddie Gilbert fan. So to date myself, I was making these like 6-hour VHS best of compilations, everything from Continental to Memphis, to NWA to old WWF tapings that Eddie Gilbert was doing. And he was just blown away by just how enamored I was and all the footage that I had. And, I was doing the same thing for like Mick Foley and those guys. But, along the way, I'd like stick my nose in and be like, hey, you think I could wrestle here? And being told, when you're 16, 17, you got to get more size, you got to be bigger. I was still, growing, I was still sprouting, but, back then it was such a different, it was a more closed in thing. If you knew a professional wrestler, it didn't matter if it was DC Drake, Larry Winters, or Eddie Gilbert. Like, it didn't, any wrestler that you could, make contact with and knew where, who was running on what night and when, you would take an awful lot, you would just go to an independent show just to go to attend pretty much, but you would still bring your stuff with you. And
always bring your bag.
Yeah. So I think like the first like 24 matches I had were all like battle royals or tag team or, hey, this guy's here, throw him in, 2 days after my 15th birthday, I started calling myself a professional wrestler, even though it was like a battle royal and a horrid 6-man tag.
Did you get paid?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the difference right there. That's the difference. Now, you mentioned Dennis Carluzzo. That was Tri-State Wrestling, right? That was before it became ECW.
Yeah, Tri-State was actually, that was Todd Gordon.
I think it was Todd Gordon too, because I've known Todd for a while.
That's what helped me out with the, before it was East Extreme, when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling, like all the guys at ECPW, Gino Caruso's school, like Damian Stone, who became Nunzio, and Gino himself, and Kodiak Bear, they were all getting like decent pushes before, the ECW regulars, as you might want to call them, before those guys started coming in. So even then, like, I knew that I need the formal training. It's just a matter of like getting up the money. So of course I'm like working crappy jobs, picking up golf balls and working at Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's, trying to save
money somehow.
Yeah, working at ShopRite, like just to try to like save up money to go to like a reputable place. Cause a lot of people weren't keen on charging me per workout. They wanted my money.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But the good thing was when you started with one and you were able to show them, or they because none of these guys were really going to call each other. They were all competing wrestling schools. So I mean, at the beginning,
that's the way it is now. Most of the guys don't want to talk to rival schools. It's funny because I had Jesse Hernandez from the School of Hard Knocks, EWF in California.
Oh yeah.
And he was telling me about a wrestling show that he was on where he worked a guy from another school, and his trainees worked a guy from another school. And they were like, those guys beat the shit out of me. They were like, they're from Jesse's school and they beat the shit out of me. So I totally get that, man. I totally get that. Tell us about your time at USWA in Memphis, because I know you did TV back in the 90s for them.
Yeah, it was actually 1993. I was, let me think. Yeah, 93. By then I was like 19, but I had been going there since like 91, just going down there and hoping to God that they would use me as a job guy. So I got a couple of chances, I was like one of the intruders with, Bobby Sheen and his brother that wrestled. But
Hmm.
his brother didn't show up that day, and next thing I knew, I was like in there with the Moondogs on a live Saturday morning TV. And then I made the move down there once I got my associates in broadcast journalism, because it was like right down there, Channel 5 studio, and it was a Fox affiliate. And Fox had like 206 affiliates all across America. So I'm like, hey, I might end up with a job that I actually went to college for. But it wasn't until July the 1st of 1994 when I moved to Memphis, and I had a girlfriend, which wound up becoming, wife and an ex-wife, mother of two of my kids. But it wasn't until I resided in Memphis that it was, I was getting used more frequently. And then some of like the spot shows too, like Buddy Wayne was really good to me because I'd always be a hand setting up the ring. And
Hmm.
I'm like, this is what I came down to Memphis to do, is do just USWA, the old Memphis territory. So since like 91 is when I started to get a foot in the door, and then Eddie Gilbert was in and out. And then, I was still keeping in touch with Lawler, because the minute he would pull up, I'd be like, hey man, I'll haul your bags or anything. And I would give him VHS tapes back in the day, but he wasn't as personable as Eddie Gilbert. Eddie
I've heard
loved
that
to
about
have
Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie loved to have a band of guys around him, even if they weren't directly involved with wrestling. It was always people that you could count on, like stooges, like, hey, go get this out of my car or whatever. And, so I owe an awful lot to Eddie. Put a strain over the years on me and Doug because, I guess Doug always saw me as being his stooge or whatever. But
Oof.
Well,
to this
ladies and
day,
gentlemen, he's talking about the legendary hot stuff Eddie Gilbert, who passed away way too young. He was one of the guys that I loved watching, man. Eddie Gilbert, him and Eric Embry, even Doug Gilbert back in the day, USWA, old Memphis. As a matter of fact, I get to wrestle in Memphis next Saturday. It's totally fucking awesome, man. Just being in Tennessee is great.
yeah, is it RSWF? Is it?
No, it's for the OIWA and Southeastern Wrestling. It's with Sir Mo. They're
Right.
doing Sir Mo. He's a friend of the channel. He's been on a while, a lot. They're doing a show called History of Black Wrestling, and they got a whole bunch of great guys on the show. It's going to be at the Memphis Hilton next Saturday night. So yeah, SOAR Championship Wrestling.
Feel more than free to drop my name to him, because I've had a long storied history with Mo, including like working for him, doing commentary for him, wrestling for him when he ran his own stuff at the Dyersburg Entertainment Center, which is like 80 miles out of Memphis. And boy, if you want to start with the Black history, a lot of credit, so much credit needs to be given to Spudnik Monroe, because even before the Norvell Austin thing, he was a guy that transcended like racial barriers like no other. And watching those old Memphis tapes, I mean, it was just kind of pounded into me, But talk about a guy that had a set of balls back in the day. They would be like, "You're not coming in here with that N-bomb," and he'd be like, "Hey, that's my partner," and
exactly.
Yeah, so he put his life, and livelihood above a lot of things just to have a black tag team partner. Like there's so much credit needs to be given, because then they started to integrate the fans. They wouldn't just have the blacks up in the balcony. They would let them. And this is all tied into the history of Memphis, but to me it was just so great just to be any part of it. That's what a super terrible fan I was of it. And then
you just want to be part of it. I mean, that's not bad at all, man. I mean, think about it. Like this whole show, remembering Black Legends of Memphis Wrestling, is going to be Southern Extreme Wrestling with the OIWA and SOAR Championship Wrestling. It's going to be at 939 Ridge Lake Boulevard. There in Memphis, Tennessee. That's going to be at the Memphis Hilton. Bell time is 7:30. Tickets are $20 ringside, $15 general, which is freaking awesome. And there's guys that are being honored on the show. You know, those guys like, like Brickhouse Brown, Ray Candy, Kamala, King Cobra, Reggie B. Fine, Rocky Johnson, the father of the Rock. You know what I mean? Like so many like legends, and like, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be an awesome show, man. And I would definitely drop your name to Mo, and to the people who are in charge of that. I would love to have Chainsaw Tony with me, Leatherface up in my corner. It's always cool being your partner instead of being across the ring from you, because once you start swinging that chainsaw, all bets are off.
The funny thing is with Mo, and this is a great story of just being a job guy, and what happened was we had the same like fanny pack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he picked up the wrong one. So I got home and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm looking into the, and I'm like, Bobby Horn, I know who that is.
You're like, oh shit. He's going to kill me.
Yeah, I had to go find him on a spot show. And I could swear it was either in Ripley, Tennessee or Halls, Tennessee. It was just a nothing happening throwaway spot show. And somehow, some way, I wound up in the second match that night with Spellbinder. And it was like kind of some eyes looking at me a little bit different after that. Like Eddie Marlin was running in town. Ooh. And I kind of got in his good graces with that. And because I told him, I was like, well, I'm here anyway. If you need a referee or anything, I got like all my stuff with me. But that all happened because I went down there to give Mo back his fanny pack. The funniest thing is, like, he's like looking at me. The minute that he hands me back my fanny pack, he goes, oh man, he goes, got to go right into his wallet and got to go right into his checkbook, knowing good and well that a black man had his stuff. I was like, just put me on the spot, and
Mo likes to fuck with people. Mo loves to fuck with people.
Yeah, I loved how back in the day you could actually joke about stuff like that.
Yeah,
it made me uneasy. Like Spellbinder and Reggie B would screw with each other nonstop. He'd be calling Spellbinder all these like northern, like Italian slang words, like Goomba, and then I hear Spellbinder. I hear Spells like, hey, shut your mouth, Reggie, and then Reggie B would come back with, he's like, all right, movie, and he would call him like every racial derogatory. And I'm like, how does he even know about some of these words? Like, I thought this was like in my circle of friends.
Back then, there wasn't Google. Yeah. It wasn't Google back then.
Yeah, so much has changed in that way. I mean, of the way that things were and the way things are now, just looking up stuff and everything. But it's weird because here lately I've been talking to a lot of the old Memphis boys, and I spent like today talking with Moondog Spot's son, and I'm just like, whatever happened to this guy and whatever happened to that guy, and trip down memory lane. He was another guy. He was a real staple, and it was so funny. Moondog Spot told me the craziest story. He grew up in Friendship, Tennessee, and he said the first time that he saw, and he would never, he'd always say black fella, and he goes, because he had never, he grew up basically without a television. And he said that, you would hear about him in books, but I never actually saw me a black man until one day I saw a black man walking down the street. And he was like, I was just kind of like taken back, like, oh, look at that. Oh, he drinks water. Oh, okay. Like, yeah, can you imagine like that, like growing up your entire life, you've never seen another person of color. You're from Friendship, Tennessee, which is an all-white, like redneck town.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me about his first time ever encountering a black person. I'm like, wow, how can that even happen? But you got to remember 50s, 60s. I mean, it was a different world, much different back then.
That's true. And while we're talking about that,
that's why the Spike Monroe, what he would do, that's why it mattered, because it was almost like he wouldn't perform, he wouldn't do and do his bit unless everybody was integrated. That's why it was so crucial. And to be so deep in the South, to be doing that, he could have got killed.
Yeah, he could have easily been killed, and he had a lot to lose. I mean, he was one of the number one draws in Memphis. it was just so much that this guy put on the line to be like, no, he's with me. And, he never pulled the whole, do you know who I am? Because everybody knew who he was. He had the gray streak in his hair. And, they didn't know him from TV. Word of mouth, everybody knew who he was.
Exactly.
But, it's just such a different day and era. It's so weird to keep pointing it out, but it's just so true with how different things really were. What a different world everybody lived in back then, too.
They say the way things change is sometimes the history does repeat itself. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, with the way things were going over the last couple months, things are finally mellowed out a little bit, which is great. But before we go into anything else, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. We will be right back with Chainsaw Tony, aka Leatherface.
Drive me insane. I'll be cruised on lane, cause I'm taking all the fun out. Drive me insane. I'll be cruised on lane, cause I'm taking all the fun out. Drive me insane. I'll be
When you want to get your hair cut, you go get your hair cut right. You head down to Big D's Barbershop. Big D's Barbershop, Vancouver, Washington's best and brightest. 1019 Main Street, Vancouver, Washington, where you can go get your hair lined up, cuts, fades, shampoos, conditions, and all the great things that go with supporting a local barbershop in a local business area. You can also reach them online at www.bigdsbarbershop.com. Go get your haircut right.
These are more than just the sounds of a safe place to go after school. These are the sounds of interest being ignited and of mentors making an impact. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we don't do just one thing. We do whatever it takes to meet the needs of every kid who comes through those doors. Because whatever it takes is what it takes to build great futures. Great futures start here.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Great futures do start at the Boys and Girls Club, and we are back with Chainsaw Tony, otherwise known as Leatherface, and my boy here to the right, according to Woods, Adam Woods, our combat sports specialist. Tony, I know you've been keeping up on current events in professional wrestling. And seeing as how FMW, in my opinion, was the foremost leader in exploding ring matches, can you give us your opinion on Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley in AEW Revolution in an exploding ring match?
Boy, everybody has brought this to my attention this past week, and Onita had trademarked like 2 years ago the King of the Exploding Barbed Wire and King of Explosion, Bakuha. So yeah, something's gonna tie in eventually, and I know it. And you tie in too with Dr. Luther there, who was an FMW original, and he knows what's up too. From time to time, I still talk to him, but I'm one of those people that, just because somebody goes on to something else, I don't want to be that guy like, hey, remember me over here? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So too many guys come and go through Memphis to ever be a burden to anybody. But, yeah, with Onita having that trademarked, they'll work something out. You know what I mean? It's a matter of time. But it's also, too, it's something big to live up to, especially stateside. They tried with CZW. I was in the midst of all that stuff when all hell broke loose. And I remember Wild 7, Satoshi, who has passed away since of stomach cancer. I remember him coming to me in the week leading all the way up to Onita and Tremont going, oh, man, if those explosions aren't, like a big He's like, it's going to look terrible. Oh my God, it's going to be a disappointment. And I was like, I'm doing everything under the sun I could possibly do, and then there's zoning permits and that kind of thing. But, Mike Hahn and them deep pockets, they're covered there. And
Yeah.
even on the Oneida front, that they're covered. They're strictly business people. And Oneida's clamoring to come back to the States anyway. And, the whole pandemic has, of course, thrown everything into such a crazy.
Disarray.
Yeah, everything is just so. I mentioned on another podcast that my official start date with DDT and how that got pushed off and everything else, and now having to wait until October to return to Japan is like, but the things you do.
Right.
The things you do for love. But it's a passionate thing too. I still think I have some mileage left in me. I know it. I know that I do. Current physical ailments have, scared me a bit. But like when I was sitting there waiting test results, like in this hand, this pinky has been numb for like over 2 weeks now.
Oh man.
And then half of this finger. And I got one doctor writing it off as carpal tunnel, and I got another doctor who is pointing out the neck surgery that I had and the big zipper on the back of my, that it might be triggering nerve damage. As for the AEW guys, I mean, look, they know how to grab somebody's attention, and if there's one thing, I mean, even out of morbid curiosity, people are going to tune in, just to see the bombs themselves go off. It's such a unique thing. I remember initially getting into FMW big time when they were, putting up barbed wire on the ropes and wondering how could professional wrestling get to this, and then the entire, they were giving it a good test run through WWS, the promotion I work with, the explosions, and Onita needed something he could latch onto and do. So on them ring trucks every night when you see those giant exploding bats and even the explosive like landmine barbed wire and stuff like that I've done with him. I mean, the detonator and all that stuff and how it works is fascinating. But I mean, when that thing goes off, holy Moses! They have I have more clips of myself getting blown up, and then I had uploaded a video of it on YouTube, and the thing gets over 1,000 hits, and I'm going, 1,000 people click the link to watch me get blown up, for Christ's sake. Like, what kind of people do I surround myself with?
What kind of society, man?
Yeah, really.
Well, the crazy thing about this particular instance with Moxley and Omega is the fact that do the fans really think that the feud? I mean, that's a feud ender. Have the feud between those two gentlemen, the two professional wrestlers, reached to a fever pitch where a exploding death match is needed? I don't think it has. And you spoke about the deep pockets of the Khans. Well, guess what? I mean, they brought the rights to Tom Waits' his song to have it for Brody Lee.
Allen.
So
oh, yeah, that's right.
In terms of getting some sort of like pushback from Onita, I don't think that's going to happen because, again, billionaire Tony is just going to, cut off an envelope or two and send it Onita's way.
Yeah. I mean, they'll work something out. It's not going to go off without a hitch. I mean, I'm pretty sure word has reached him now. In fact, I have to message him back anyway, but it's not coming at somebody in a bad way. Like, hey, that's my thing. It's my idea. And I got a copy of it. If you know him, he's all business. So, I mean, there's, clips of this guy meeting with Vince McMahon in 1997 to do an explosion match here in America. And it never really happened. Others have tried and, it's not quite the same. I mean, it's the way that they have it hooked up. They had a lady, she would stand in and referee, but her job, other than, transporting everything and getting the baby faces and the heels to all the different buildings and everything when we toured Sapporo, Asahikawa and all the surrounding towns. That was her job, was to make sure that all that stuff was rigged up and, that nothing went wrong with it. And that's the level of dedication, because, they knew that night after night, that was going to be in their main events, and it would be any interchangeable 6 or 8 mans and that crazy stuff. But with FMW, it was all this fury, it was all this hatred that brought it out for Onita to do all these death matches against all these guys, because if the guy was still breathing afterwards, and the guy just simply raised one finger on his hand, the feud wasn't over.
The guy was still breathing, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly what he just said. He did not stutter. He said if the guy was still breathing.
Yeah, because we'd make it a point to still be a heel even after you were blown up, and a couple of times I caught myself like flipping off the people, and they're like, "Oh no, that's never really done in Japan." And I'm like, "Well, then I'm that guy,
Mm-hmm.
In the spirit of Eddie Gilbert, tell me don't go out there and do this to people, and I do it." But yeah, it was like, for me, it was so interesting to see storyline wise, like how wrestling can get to that point. The thing behind that a lot of people miss is with deathmatch wrestling is death defying. It's not that anybody dies, It's like world of difference. Is death defying. The stuff that you're doing is, can kill a man. It's not supposed to be, a battle to death, which a lot of people were under the assumption of. Good frame of reference. If anybody hasn't checked this out, this is from like 1992, but it definitely got the Memphis territory to survive another year. And, I've been on this whole Moondog kick lately because, I'm talking to Spots Kid and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the feud with Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler with the Moondogs. Oh, Moses, the level of violence there, where they're just beating each other senseless with boards, chairs, tables, and you name
Adam
it.
Woods is our resident historian for professional wrestling. That's his jam.
So I mean, and that's one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about. Obviously, before we get to like the Memphis stuff, you mentioned, I guess, in the line of Memphis, Bobby Shane, which I think, I mean, there was a couple of names that you mentioned earlier on the podcast, the Savoldis as well as King Bobby Shane, the original king of Memphis, right? So, do you have any either Savoldi or Bobby Shane stories?
Well, Jerry had gotten his idea from Bobby Shane. Bobby Shane, he had gotten the whole king gimmick. I think he was leaving. I think, as the story goes, he was leaving the Florida territory, and Lawler was down there doing a shot and said, "Hey, I want to buy that kind of gimmick," and the guy just pretty much gave it to him, like, "Hey, it's my last night in this territory anyway." And Jerry was just fascinated with the gimmick, and he pretty much just took it over from there. And brought it back with him to Memphis, because he was no longer, he spent a couple of years as a prelim guy,
right?
Just like me. And believe it or not, it's the same promoter that was giving me shots in the surrounding towns. Old Buddy Wayne Peel. He was promoting local towns, and he was booking Jerry on a lot of stuff. And Jerry was under a mask, and then he'd come back as himself. It's the same story that Honky Tonk Man has, where, you could be the Red Shadow one night, and the same night, go back out as yourself. I mean, it was all about getting experience and getting people seen, and, you're able to go in there and do your stuff, and, hope that somebody has a keen eye for it and that someone will give you a shot. But, yeah, it was, again, it was such a different thing to be a preliminary guy and then have to work your way up in that old Memphis territory. And a lot of that still existed, but they were more desperate. I'm going to say toward the latter part of, like, early 90s to mid 90s. I mean, them having to compete with Vince McMahon, who was literally coming into their town. I mean, that's stiff competition. And once you see the glitz and glamour of WWF, I mean, it's almost hard to take your local wrestling serious. But, yeah, the Savoldis ran their, IWCCW, which originally I think it was ICW, and then they combined with, because you would see all kinds of wacky stuff with like Fritz von Erich's promotion, and they had like a working agreement with them. So it's like with that kind of stuff. Again, for its time, growing up in Jersey and being able to see, the stuff from Dallas that they would air, or some of the old Georgia stuff, or even some of the more obscure promotions, territorial promotions like out in Phoenix. And you were getting to see some of that stuff. You were getting to see the Carlos Colon matches where the ring was surrounded by a bunch of like towels that were doused in gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get to see a whole lot of that. So it was like really mind blowing growing up in Jersey and getting to see other stuff like that, not have to trade for it, But trading, you knew what you were going to get.
It's interesting you say that too, because like for me, my journey to professional wrestling started with the Portland, Oregon. It started with NWA Championship Wrestling from Florida, and also there was a show that used to come on every Saturday morning right before the UWF show came on. It was a show with Gordon Soley and Joe Pedicino, and it was called the Wrestling News Network.
Oh my God!
They would show wrestling from all around the world, and I got to I learned about wrestling in like Portland, Oregon, wrestling in Tennessee, the USWA. I learned about global wrestling. I actually got to wrestle for global wrestling with Tug Taylor.
Wow.
I learned about all of these places, and that's why I met Chaz for the first time when he was a young guy, and the Lightning Kid, aka X-Pac. Watching those shows and getting to wrestle in those places, it was freaking awesome, because like I grew up watching that stuff. Like I didn't know, until I was maybe like 12 or 13, I didn't know about WWF. I'm an NWA baby. I grew up watching NWA, Florida Championship Wrestling. I am so stoked. And ladies and gentlemen, I've never been this excited to have anyone on the podcast in my entire life. But I get to interview an idol of mine, a guy who helped put me on the track to become a professional wrestler. I get to interview the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff.
Oh, wow.
And then hopefully down the line, I get to interview Magnum TA. These are the two guys that influenced me so much that where I wanted to become a professional wrestler.
Both of those guys have led some life. Like Magnum TA, post car wreck and everything. I mean, he had his ear to the door to those, to the offices of the NWA and later on WCW. And Nikita Koloff, I mean, the guy gets married, loses his wife almost right away.
It was like 6 months, and it was like so inspirational,
No kidding. Loses all that weight and mass and comes back with the short spiked hair. And, religion works with some people. Other people, it doesn't. With him, it's a shoot, as many years as he's spent, and it's helped a lot of the wrestlers. I just, some people view it as a last resort. Wars have been fought over religion. I don't push my beliefs on nobody. And I mean, some of my best friends are atheists, but to live the life that Nikita Koloff has lived is just unbelievable. To stay in character that long, and if you ever heard the stories of him going to the gym and to the local gym down there in Georgia and staying in character, and manager comes over, sir, you have to have some kind of membership. I don't know how to say this to you, and I'm like, Ivan, like is something else to stay in that character,
Man,
he brought up
he's got the Koloff for Christ ministry thing going right now too.
Yeah, that was like you brought up Global, the Lightning Kid. I remember watching him and Bill Wilcox, and him like navigating through Jersey too, all the way out from like the Minneapolis area, and then to find out he's actually a Florida kid that was trained by the Malenkos. You're like, man, this guy hustled and went through some grounds, because man, he was all over the place. Like on Independence in the early 90s, it seemed like you couldn't get away from the Lightning Kid. which was great for the business at the time because then people could no longer say, "You guys are too small. You'll never
Right.
you know, look at this guy."
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean the whole business just overcame such a size, and the big plotting, wrestler. I mean, those matches with Lightning Kid and Chaz down in Texas were just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. For the global light heavyweight title, those matches were epic. You threw in
Yeah,
Jerry Lynn in there
Jerry
too.
Lynn, yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Lynn too.
I
Jerry
saw
Lynn's
that.
another one.
I
I
saw
don't.
those words turning in your head, Adam. I saw the Jerry Lynn comment coming.
Uh-oh.
So on YouTube is a match with him and Kid Cash that I refereed.
Oh man, I forgot about Kid Cash. David Cash was amazing, man.
Yeah, it's
And
just
fought
with him.
MMA and won.
He
Yeah,
was
exactly.
he was almost too much of a stand-up guy in wrestling. Like wrestling does not like people with a set of balls who are going to make some waves, and David Cash was one guy that, if you went to him with any bullshit, he don't care who you are. You had a set of balls on him, man. I remember in the early days of TNA, he was getting a nice big push, and he just lost it on this shoot interview and just outed people, and he didn't care. He was just going for the jugular. He's always been like that, and to me, in one sense, is to be respected, but within the parameters of pro wrestling, where you're not supposed to get heat with this guy or heat with that guy. There's one guy that just didn't give a shit.
It was like, I give no fucks about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we are allowed to curse. All right.
Oh,
Yeah,
this show, we're adults. We're adults.
I'll never forget. It was up in it was in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and they had this super show where they brought in all this talent from TNA, WWF, WWE, and them two wrestled each other both nights. And I remember Moondog Spot sitting down, in the lobby. You could overlook because it overhung,
Mm-hmm.
and they were up on the second floor, and they had a couple girls in there. Spot's looking up there, and he's all half tanked and shit. And he's like, I guess they don't wore out the pussy, goofy stuff like that, or the Moondogs. Is they would fill the garbage can full of all this Kentucky Fried Chicken and all this shit that they were eating, and then they would take the lampshade off, turn it upside down, and they'd be throwing their chicken bones in it all night long.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah, goofy stuff like that. You
Real
tend
stories.
to remember because you're like, what, what other people do this, just to entertain themselves. But we spend a lot of
Professional
time
wrestlers are a different breed, ladies and gentlemen. That's for sure. We are a different breed of people. So before I let you go, Tony, I want to go ahead and shout out some of your social medias. I mean, I know for a fact that I have your Twitter up here at twitter.com/@TonyMyers74. Do you have any other links you want to throw out there? I mean, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, OnlyFans, all that.
The Twitter was the one that no good Leatherface hacked, and he took it over.
Oh, that guy Leatherface.
Yeah. The same thing happened with I started putting pictures up of my kids and my grandson, when he was first born, and then he hacks that, and that was on my Instagram. So he turned it into the handle Chainsaw Tony FMW Leather, all one word, and it says the minute you go on there, you see fuck Tony Myers, he's dead and buried.
Wow.
I killed him. Fuck you for asking. What the fuck? The Facebook is one and the same. It's me, my legal, Tony Myers, hometown Saitama. Because when I updated everything, I was in Saitama, and now I'm trapped in America until until October. But I'm not. Somebody's gonna have to tell me how Snapchat. One of the younger girls that I work with, she was telling me all about TikTok, and I guess I got to get I guess
They're gonna have you.
keep
They're gonna have you on
Snapchat
all the
is-
social medias, huh?
Yeah, Snapchat is what happens to your TikTok when you mess with the wrong rat, from what I hear.
I got to
Oh,
take your
man.
word for it because, well, I think eventually, like, to me, I don't know. You have to like recreate a whole brand new, and it's like, oh man, I already did all this for like Twitter, and I did this for Facebook, and I did this for Instagram, but Twitter, Instagram are both, you'll never see my face in the light of day on there. I think there's
I'll tell you a secret that might help you out, though. And this is something that I learned from my 12-year-old daughter. I am now a social media mogul and a guru. I know all about social media now because of a 12-year-old. You can take your Facebook and your Instagram and your Twitter and link them. So if you post on one, it goes to all of them. I was like, what the hell? 12-year-old kid, man, I tell you. Yeah, it works.
Well, Paul, I remember like Paul Heyman on Steve Austin's show said like, when they're like, how do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's cool or hip or whatever? And he flat out said it. He's like, I go to my kids. And my kids know what's hip. They know what's cool. And, he kind of uses his kids as like a frame of reference for that.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah. And it's fascinating how things, move on and everything becomes new again. But
my kids are that buffer. They tell me, hey, Dad, that's cool for you to wear. Or, Dad, you look like an idiot wearing that. Hey, and I got to go with it because they know. They know. Don't say stuff like that, Dad. That's not cool,
Yeah, I was kind of looked at him like, well, for me, I don't know. It'd be like going all the way through everything all over again. But yeah, but maybe that's something I need to explore or what have you. I mean, there's somebody had made one of those GIF things of I had a match with Homeless Jimmy for Survival Till Beta.
I love Homeless Jimmy.
Yeah, it was this tiny little in Joju. They had this like tiny little karate dojo. And the play, when I say small, I mean this is small. Majority of the fans have to wait outside when they run house shows. That's how small it is. And yeah, I'll never forget like the movie Breaking, or wait a minute before that. Yeah, when he's doing the whole dance spot with the broom. Combine that with the part, from The Last Dragon, where the kid's breakdancing to get out of the what is he tied up with, rope?
Yeah.
I did that because I was tied up with tape. Yeah. And someone made a GIF out of it, like, Happy Friday, everyone. I think it was a Murder, Death, Kill Club. One of those guys. It's like, Happy Friday, everyone. And you see me dancing and shooking and jiving, breakdancing, getting out of I do stuff to entertain myself, when I'm not emulating Terry Funk or, I even catch myself doing the wobbly knees and the herky jerky stuff. But I mean, I knew when they, christened me with the third Leatherface thing, I was like, man, there's so much I have to live up to. Like, you might as well just take it go.
I think a exploding death match happened in the car. Holy shit!
Well, no, I figured, you already can be compared to all these people and everything. It's like you might as well just take what you enjoy out of like certain things or whatever, and just kind of incorporate it into, and stay away from Google. Don't Google yourself.
I like how you said stay away from Google. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been your boy Chainsaw Tony, FMW's Leatherface. I want to thank you very much, Tony, for joining us, man. Anytime you want to come on the Roundtable podcast, man, you got a chair, you can pull up a seat, and you can shoot the shit with us, man. No worries, brother.
I truly appreciate the platform and, this wobbly phone. And, I appreciate the platform, man. I mean, anytime I could get it out there, I mean, I'll give you all I got. And,
for sure, brother.
It's so funny because when you approach me, I'm like, course I know who you are, man.
I just saw you a few months ago at BCW. Shit.
Yeah, I was like, and then on top of it, I knew who you were anyway because you do the live, and I'll catch the feeds every now and then, and
Yeah, I see
one
you
of them,
pop on. I see you pop on.
yeah, and then people, or they'll tell me like, here's a link to this. You got to see this. You got to see what's going on, and so I still try to keep in touch, and don't have my finger on the pulse of the wrestling industry, but that kind of thing.
You know me, man. I'll let you know what's going on all day, every day, brother.
Yeah, and that I truly appreciate because then I at least have a damn clue of what's going on. For maybe like a few solid weeks, I was getting back in the ring. I started to feel my ring shape and everything, and then the numbness set in, and I was like, "Oh no!" Because now it's like I got a built-in excuse to not be the best, or pull out the best, or my idea of going to wrestling school is, hit the ropes, take a couple bumps, get the wind back in me, get ring shape, which is way different than running or anything else.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You take a bump and all that air comes out of those lungs. Man, I remember, man, I didn't wrestle for like 5 months. And when I went to my first show, I took a back bump and I was like, oh, I'm dead.
Either that or look at all the young guys that are starting out when they're running the ropes, and look at how blue, like they're like right where the kidney is in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that bruising. Man,
it's like a liver shot.
Yeah,
exactly. Welcome to my world.
My idea of walking into any wrestling school is like, give me the greenest person that you have here. Give me the person that's like lost and you think that there's no hope for. Because like I'd like to pull something out of that. Like anybody can have a good match with somebody who's good.
Exactly. You can, if you have a good match with someone who's horrible, you are truly a professional.
Like, to me, that to me would be the testament if they actually get to learn something, or if I can contribute in some kind of way instead of writing somebody off as like a lost cause. Just because I'd been written off, getting in the ring and getting the shit beat out of you,
that's easy.
Yeah, anybody's willing to beat the shit out of the green guy who's just starting, but
almost like we lost Adam.
Yeah, we shrunk into two. I'm glad it's not nothing that I did.
Nah, his signal probably dropped.
Oh,
he'll be back. We have to do the round. We have to do the review of the Bloodsport 5 that just happened tonight. So he better come back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was Super Beast on that?
Exactly, Super Beast was on. I think it was on 4 too. Like Super Beast is exactly what he sounds like, a friggin' Super Beast. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back with more of the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast.
Drive me insane. All these girls are lame, cause they're taking all the fun out. Drive me insane. All these girls are lame, cause they're taking all the fun out. Drive me insane. All these girls.
When you want to get your hair cut, you go get your hair cut right. You head down to Big D's Barbershop. Big D's Barbershop, Vancouver, Washington's best and brightest. 1019 Main Street, Vancouver, Washington, where you can go get your hair lined up, cuts, fades, shampoos, conditions, and all the great things that go with supporting a local barbershop in a local business area. You can also reach them online at www.bigdsbarbershop.com. Go get your haircut right.
These are more than just the sounds of a safe place to go after school. These are the sounds of interest being ignited and of mentors making an impact. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we don't do just one thing. We do whatever it takes to meet the needs of every kid who comes through those doors. Because whatever it takes is what it takes to build great futures. Great futures start here.
That's right, ladies. Once again, great futures do start at the Boys and Girls Club. And Mr. Tony Myers, a.k.a. Chainsaw Tony, a.k.a. FMW's Leatherface. Before I let you go, there's a game that we usually play, and I want to go ahead and try to get that game out to you right now. It's a simple game. Everyone loves it on the podcast. Real simple. It's called Team With, Feud With, or Fire. Simple is this. You can team with anyone in the industry, no matter who it is, no matter where they are, live or dead. You can feud with the same, live or dead, and you can fire any SOB you want with no explanation unless you want to give us one. So, team with, feud with, or fire.
Wow. Because there's a lot of throat cutting. You're going to be used to it in professional wrestling. I mean, within the confines of professional wrestling, it's it's wrestling. You come back from the dead, apparently.
Yeah, sometimes twice.
Yeah. It's going to be strange how things stack up, though, depending on the names.
Oh yeah. So what you got for me? Team with, feud with, or fire?
God, I'm drawing a complete blank. How in the world? Team with, feud with, or fire. I'll give you any three. Oh boy. That could be really difficult. Okay. Here you go. Here's three. Austin Idol, Spudnik Monroe, Jerry Jarrett.
Okay. So you would team with Austin Idol. You feud with Spudnik Monroe. You fire Jerry Jarrett.
Wow.
That's some heat right there. That's some heat, ladies and gentlemen. That is some heat. The mic has been dropped. The tea has been spilled.
Because think about it. I mean, Jerry Jarrett, he's made an awful lot of money with a lot of people.
Yeah.
People that were hopeless. Austin Idol was a big draw. To this day, people still talk about his promos. And
he was pretty heavy on the NWA Power show. That was just on the air a while ago.
Yeah, Vince McMahon going to prison. Who do they come to run the company?
True statement.
Yeah.
True statement.
And then, Spudnik Monroe, I mean, Jesus. How could you do anything but try to make money with that guy after everything we said about him before?
Well, see, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is how you succeed in the business. Thank you very much for joining us, Tony. This has been another exciting edition of the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast, where you can hear us on Spotify, you can hear us on Apple, you can hear us on Google, you can hear us live every week on the Roundtable Podcast, on the Roundtable Podcast Facebook page. You can find us on the YouTube channel, bcwworldwide.tv. You can find us on Anchor FM / the Roundtable Podcast. And you can hear us on the iHeartRadio. So, once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the Roundtable Podcast. Later.